Let me briefly just tell you why we're here. We are here to present the work and the recommendation of the Child Welfare Reform Council. We are here to tell you about the changes in the state laws and the budgets that resulted from the work of this Child Welfare Reform Council. We're here to present the DFCS Blueprint for Change and to tell you about possibly any changes that have been made in that since June of last year. And one of the main reasons we're here is we're to solicit input from you, the public, the people of Catoosa County and other counties surrounding us, about what you would like to see in our community. Let me review the agenda just briefly. The first hour, we're going to have our two speakers, Director Bobby Cagle and Ms. Stephanie Blank, who's the chairwoman of the council. And then they're going to share all the information about what's going on. And then the second hour, Pat Willis, who I introduced, she's going to come up here and she will handle our question and answer session and give you an opportunity to find out more. And if you look on your seat, you will already see that there is a card there for you to submit any questions that you might have, and she'll explain that a little bit more. Okay, but before we do that, you can see on the agenda that we're going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to do this real briefly because nobody likes to talk about data too much. But you were given a handout, if you got it on the back table, about Region 1, which is, well, it's all of Northwest Georgia. Most of you kind of know what counties are involved there. But about Region 1, and this data comes from the Georgia Kids Count, and it tells about how well our region is doing and how poorly they're doing in certain areas. So I just want to sort of go over that, hit some of the, I wouldn't say the high parts, the high spots, but probably the low spots, because I want to let you know what are things that we need to be doing in Region 1. And then I'll even tell more specifically Catoosa County, because most of you are from Catoosa County, in our region and in our county. On the first page of Region 1, down under Healthy Children, one of the things that kind of glared at me was the teen birth rate, ages 15 to 19. And as you can see, the state of Georgia has 33.6 per thousand, and Region 1 has 39.2. So we're higher in that area, and that's something that we need to work on. And then if you go down a few more, the teen deaths, the same age group, ages 15 through 19, state of Georgia as a whole is at 42.6, and we're at 45.9. That's another area where we are higher. And on the second page there, one of the things under children ready to start school that I noticed was children ages 3 to 4 not attending preschool. Georgia has a rate of 49.9% not attending, and Region 1 has 60.5. So we need to get more of our kids into pre-Ks, preschools. Then under children succeeding in school, we do have a higher rate in Region 1 of children being absent more than 15 days. Georgia as a whole is at 8.4, and we're at 10%. And the very last item or line of data on that page, teens age 16 to 19, not in school and not working. Georgia's rate is 11.1, and in Region 1 we're at 13.5, and that's not good. And then on page 3, I hope I'm not going too fast, but you're certainly free to take this home and read it at your own convenience and see this. But there were several things under stable, self-sufficient families. Region 1 is higher than the state in incidents of child abuse, substantiated incidents of child abuse and or neglect. We're at 10.9 per thousand. The Georgia rate is 7.6. And then the next three items were also higher than the state. The next item, they split it up, and it talks about substantiated child abuse. We're at 4.6, and the state is 3.1. And then child neglect, we're at 7.7, and the state is at 5.2. So we're higher in both of those. And then the next one after that about foster care, being reunited with their families, The Georgia rate, of course, the higher you go, the better that is. It's at 72.1%, and Region 1 is only at 63.6%. So we need to do a better job reuniting those foster kids with family members. Under strong communities, briefly, I'm going to say that the first two there, adult educational attainment of high school graduate or higher, we're not as high as the state. We're at 77.6, and Georgia is at 84.4. And then also bachelor's degree, which is a huge margin. We're at 16.3 in Region 1, and Georgia rate is 27.8. So we need our people need to be more educated on the college level. Okay, and Catoosa County, did you get also that sheet? If you did, I'm just going to tell you a few of those real quickly. Under healthy children, and as long as I've been coordinator of the Catoosa Family Cabinet, that's been for 8 years now, we have always been low on this one first item there, and that's birth weight, low birth weight babies. The Georgia rate is at 9.4%, and we're at 15.5%. So that's an area we've tried to work on, but that makes a difference all the way through those children's lives when they start out being under the birth weight they should be. And then down there, about halfway down on that page, the teen births, which was also an indication for Region 1, you can see that we're at 41.9% per thousand, and the Georgia as a whole is at 33.6. So we're higher than we should be on that. Okay, and I'm going to go real quickly over the next two pages. On children succeeding in school, on page 2, the very last two items there, teens who are high school dropouts, ages 16 to 19. By the way, Catoosa County does a good job. We have a high graduation rate, but of those who do drop out, we have a high dropout rate. The Georgia as a whole is 7.3, and we are 7.5. Just a little bit of difference, but it matters. And also those not in school and not working is about 0.4% higher than the rate of Georgia. And I believe I'm going to stop there, but look over the rest of those and see where you see that Region 1 can improve, but also that Catoosa County can improve. All right, I'm to the point where I'm going to introduce our very competent and wonderful, talented DFCS director, Mr. Jonathan Sloan. He was interim for a while, and now he is our full director since May 1st. We're excited about that, and he is going to introduce our special speakers for today. Jonathan?
Thank you, Phil, for that introduction. Phil, as y'all know, has been instrumental in collaborative efforts here in Catoosa County. He's been a wonderful guy to work with, and he really cares about this community, as I'm sure many of you know. Region 1, I know some here are here from Region 1 in general. Region 1 consists of 10 counties in the Northwest region, that borders Alabama and Tennessee. So we are happy to have you visit us in Catoosa County. As a long-term person from Catoosa County, I have to say I'm a bit biased in that to say that Catoosa County is the best county in the region, if not the state, but we are happy to have you. And we are thankful for Stephanie Blanken, for Bobby Cagle to visit us. We're excited to have them here. I think it's testament to the collaborative efforts here that we know that we are stronger together. We are stronger together. And so thank you for being here tonight. Just a quick word about Catoosa County Division of Family and Children's Services. Last year, we received about 861 reports of abuse and neglect. We have currently 66 children in foster care, 14 foster homes, and 24 kids are in our county. And currently we have about 120 CPS cases. So that's a quick rundown of Catoosa County Division of Family and Children's Services. I just want to mention, though, that Catoosa County bills itself as the gateway to Georgia, and I hope that Bobby Cagle and Stephanie Blank, that you see Catoosa County as the gateway to the blueprint for change. Stephanie Blank is a longtime advocate in Georgia for children's issues. She currently chairs Governor Nathan Deal's Commission on Child Welfare Reform, serves on First Lady Sandra Deal's Children's Cabinet, and is the founding chair of GEARS, a not-for-profit focusing on children birth to 5. She is also the co-founder of Mothers and Others for Clean Air, serves on the System Board and Quality Committee for Children's Health Care of Atlanta, is on the National Board of Jumpstart, and is the incoming chair for the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta. She spent 17 years gaining valuable experience of children's issues, best practices, and not-for-profit management as a trustee of the A.M. Blank Family Foundation. Most importantly, she is the proud mother of Joshua, Max, and Kylie. Next, we'll have Bobby Cagle. Bobby Cagle has served as the director of the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services since his appointment by Governor Deal in June 2014. In his first 11 months, he led the agency to improve outcomes and secured additional resources. He's established a vision that the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services is the best child welfare agency in the world, which has been embraced by, I can say, all the staff. Mr. Cagle has created a blueprint to make it happen. Prior to joining the Division of Family and Children's Services, Mr. Cagle served as the commissioner of Bright from the Start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, the agency responsible for the early care and education of hundreds of thousands of Georgia's children. Mr. Cagle has a background in public child welfare. He started his career as a caseworker in rural North Carolina. He served as a rural county director and an urban county deputy director. Mr. Cagle previously worked as the Georgia DFCS Family Services Director and Director of Legislative Affairs. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Sociology and Master of Social Work from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Stephanie Blank.
I have been involved in children's issues, well, I've been taking care of kids since I was 12. I started babysitting when I was 12 years old, but became formally engaged in this work in 1995. Started looking at violence prevention among teens and why they kind of derail in high school, and realized that the more we talked with providers, the more that they wanted to get to these kids earlier. And the ones who were working with middle schoolers said that they wish they could get them earlier. And that's how I became really invested in working in the birth to 5 space, because that's when some of the most exciting stuff that'll ever happen with a kid's brain occurs, is in that birth to 5 space. So I've spent a great number of years working on that, and also in the healthcare system, pediatrics, particularly as it relates to child maltreatment. That has been a passion of mine. Again, because I'm a mom, and I can think of no greater break in trust than when a parent harms the very child that they're supposed to love the most. So I've been engaged with children's health care for, let's see, my oldest is 18. So for 17 years, I've worked with Children's Health Care of Atlanta around these issues as well. And it has all begun to weave together. When Aaron Hames, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff, approached me because Governor Deal had asked about this Child Welfare Reform Commission, I was so honored and happy to be a part of it, because so much of this weaves together all of these issues. They are all interrelated. And I think Governor Deal recognizes that as well, that we have to begin to talk about this issue much more holistically. So he created the commission just over a year ago. We were charged with coming back with very specific recommendations that were actionable as well in regards to what could be done to shore up the child welfare system. Many of you heard on the news probably about privatization and the kind of debate that was going on within that legislative session. You will notice that in Senate Bill 138, we did not address privatization issues, and there was a very purposeful reason for that. First, the governor does feel that it is the responsibility of the state as well as private citizens to ensure the safety of all of our children. Two, that when private partnerships work and make the most sense for children, they should be utilized, and we have examples of that occurring within our state. But where our system was breaking down was not around privatization issues. In fact, the majority of harm that is done to children, I hear children having fun in the hallway, which is nice to hear, but unfortunately, it's normally the biological parent or someone in that family or a paramour. That's normally who is harming a child. It's not foster families who are committing their life to doing good work, by and large. It does happen, but that's a rarity. So we wanted to focus on what were the things that we could do that would have the most impact on shoring up the safety of our children. The first one was looking at caseload management. It was, to be perfectly honest, and Bobby will touch on this later, too high for any one human being to handle on their own, and to do it with the attention to detail and the follow-up that needed to be done. So that was one issue we wanted to address. We also wanted to address the morale and the safety issues concerning being a caseworker out in the field. It's very difficult, very complicated work. I know that it often gets painted in certain ways by what you read and hear on the television and newspapers, but we know it is much, much more complex than what is often portrayed. The other thing that we wanted to do was to make sure that, that the entities within the state had the ability to talk with each other. Oftentimes, children fall through the cracks because the teacher who knew what was going on didn't know that she could speak with someone else, or DFCS didn't know that they could share information with the school, and because those things weren't talking, it was unfortunately children that sometimes suffered. So we went to the governor with a set of recommendations, and the outcome of that was House Bill 138. And I am so happy to report that out of those, the House and Senate, House Bill 138 only had 3 dissenting votes. That's pretty remarkable. In fact, out of the Senate, we didn't have any. Isn't that correct, Bobby? So this has gotten incredible support from both sides of the aisle. This is what we would call a purple issue, and it has been embraced in that way. So what is House Bill 138? What are the major things that it says? Well, the first and foremost, and I think it's the most critical piece, is that Bobby Cagle, our director, now reports directly to the governor. There is no middle person in between all of that. If Bobby has something he feels that the governor needs to hear, he tells it to him directly. If Bobby, I'm sorry, I know Bobby for so long that I call him Bobby instead of Director Cagle. But if he has something he needs, he can go directly to him and say, Governor, this is what I need. And the outcome of that has been 278 additional caseworkers added, and in this legislative session through House Bill 138, $36 million is being appropriated to add back into the Department of Children and Family Services, which I think is pretty remarkable in one session. It also allows for data sharing, as I mentioned earlier, between state agencies. We've all heard of HIPAA compliance, and there's FERPA in the schools. There's probably some other IPA something that people get concerned about because they don't want to do anything in violation of those policies. But this allows for appropriate data sharing around these kids who we need to be coordinating efforts. DCAL can now talk to DFCS so that that teacher can understand why that child may be acting out or having trouble in school. It also allows foster parents the ability to make prudent and reasonable decisions on behalf of the foster child to create a more normal atmosphere for that child. A prime example of this, and many of you who are foster parents would know this, but prior to this bill, children couldn't have a sleepover. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she lives for sleepovers. That's like so important to her social life. So to deny the child the opportunity to have something as simple and basic as a sleepover really compromised how normal life was for them. So this gives that foster parent the ability to make those normal decisions that every regular parent gets to make for their own children. And then we also are addressing safety issues. We have a partnership that's been created with Georgia Tech to address a safety device. As I mentioned earlier, caseworkers going out into the field can often be in very dangerous situations. We need a way for them to communicate safely without drawing attention. If they need law enforcement backup, rather than escalating a situation and getting a cell phone out. So that's something that we've got funding for now through the bill. And finally, one of the most important pieces, and this was tried before in Georgia and did not, successfully make it, but we will be establishing a child abuse registry. The important distinction this time is that it allows for due process. If somebody feels they've been placed on the registry erroneously, and it is only for those who have been convicted of child abuse. But this is so critical because DCAL right now has no way of knowing if somebody has a prior conviction of child abuse, because if child abuse goes through the family courts, it's not processed as a criminal offense. So you could have somebody doing some just horrific things to a child, but it may not get recorded as a criminal offense, and DCAL would have no way of knowing that when they go to hire a potential employee. And in fact, we had a mother come and testify during this session because she lost her child on the very first day that she took her child to a licensed child care. It was a home center. Very first day she'd ever dropped her baby off, she gets a phone call, and the child had died at the hands of that. And it turns out that the woman had prior history and had been charged with child abuse. We want to make sure that that never, ever happens again, and this child abuse registry gives us the ability to help ensure that. It is different than the sex offender registry. The general public cannot look this information up. We want to respect people's privacy, but it gives DCAL the chance to put a request in and say, can you either approve or deny this application for employment based on whether or not there's any history. So we are protecting individual citizens' privacy by not making this public, but at the same time protecting our children. So those are some of the highlights of the child welfare reform. The other thing that we wanted to do, and while this is not a part of a legislative bill, but it's part of why we're here today, and part of what I want to talk to you about in just a moment, is we recognized that DFCS needed a bit of a PR campaign and public awareness around the real issues facing both the families, the children, and also the caseworkers out in the field. What complex, difficult, challenging work this is, and how many issues wrap into this with families, from poverty to substance abuse to their own histories of violence and neglect as a child. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, because sometimes we think about these children kind of in a vacuum and don't realize what the implications can be with the effects of abuse and neglect from the child's experience. So what is the experience of a maltreated child? Well, a lot of those you probably could guess right off: the fear, the uncertainty. They can't control any things in their life. They're constantly anxious, and there can be anger, of course. Guilt and shame often surprise people. But children as young as 2 and 3 can feel guilt and shame, and oftentimes because they don't have the ability to understand why things are happening that are bad, they think it's something that they did, and they feel bad about themselves. So those can be particularly damning, the guilt and shame aspect as well. But a child's reaction to trauma depends on a lot of things: how old they are, what developmental stage they're at, whether they're the actual victim of it or they're witnessing it. And very often, domestic violence and child abuse can run hand in hand. So a lot of these kids are also seeing potentially mom being beaten up as well by maybe a boyfriend. And this last one, the availability of protective, responsive adults. Oftentimes, abuse or neglect can be mitigated if there is a loving, oftentimes it's a grandparent, in that child's life that's there consistently. It doesn't take away the harm that's being done, but it does offset that with an appropriate attachment to a loving, caring adult. But unfortunately, it's our youngest children, the ones with the least ability to either seek help or speak out, that are most often the most frequent victims of the worst types of abuse and neglect. And in fact, over 50% statewide of our children that are in foster care are under the age of 5. So again, this is a significant issue, and it's a significant early learning issue as well. So what are the signs of a child who has traumatic stress? Nightmares, they may change their eating patterns. When children are very stressed about a situation that's occurring repeatedly, oftentimes they get that stomach ache every day that's unexplained. Mommy, I feel like I'm going to throw up. A lot of that can come from anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome. And then, the emotional side effects are what we often don't think about. This type of abuse and neglect imprints itself emotionally on a child as well. So there is depression, there is the anxiety. And when it becomes really bad, there's what's called disassociation, which is really dangerous because they are beginning to wall themselves off from other humans. So the signs that you are often going to see are behavioral, and that is the 4-year-old who was perfectly, potty trained and going to the bathroom may start wetting the bed. That is a regression and a developmental milestone. Hyperactivity and poor attention. Oftentimes, we think of those kids as not being well disciplined, but that can be a form of acting out from trauma that you feel. If there is an abrupt change in behavior, if Johnny has been a happy-go-lucky child and suddenly is sullen, withdrawn, doesn't want to talk to people, that can be a big red flag. But the biggest reason I want to talk about this, and we'll go on to the other signs, is that these type of behavioral outcomes are there because kids at this age, when they're little, they do not have either the emotional maturity or the verbal ability to be able to talk through the awful things they're either seeing or experiencing in their lives. So this lack of control of their behavior or the hyperarousal or the aggression, that's what happens in schools, and that's why we have a growing national issue with preschool and kindergarten expulsion. As shocking as that is, there was a bill that was introduced this past session to prevent kindergartners from being expelled from school. That's how serious of an issue this is. But a lot of these kids, they are not bad kids, even though that's how they get labeled. They are kids who've experienced the worst things. They have no voice, no outlet to be able to talk about it. Nobody's asking them, is something happening in your life? And they get labeled and are sent to special ed programs, which end up costing the whole system. The other thing that these kids have a lot of trouble doing is identifying appropriate emotions. When you've had a loving, stable relationship where somebody takes care of you as a young child, you learn how to, if I'm looking at your faces out in this audience right now, if you're looking me in the eye but you're not smiling, I don't necessarily take that as a negative sign. Hopefully it's that you're paying attention and that you're engaged. But for a child who's been chronically abused, they can start to misinterpret every facial movement that they see. So that even the one on the top left and the one on the bottom right, and that one says the top left one is at ease and the bottom right one is just a mild kind of, those can be interpreted as aggressive or mad or you're upset with me because they've become conditioned to be fearful of everything they're seeing. And this can get carried over into their interactions with their schoolmates and with their teachers, and that trigger is just right there. And this is a big issue for these kids. So this kind of goes over the whole thing about child maltreatment. Whether it's coming from abuse or neglect, and I think it's really important to point out that abuse, as horrific as it is, neglect can be just as impactful in what happens to a child's life, especially sustained neglect can be more harmful than a one-time incident of abuse. And these are all the things that we see. These behavioral problems, I saw that, I was listening, you have a very high teen pregnancy rate in this area. Lots of times children who have been abused, particularly if there was sexual abuse involved in that, a lot of the girls exhibit very promiscuous behavior. It's a form of self-harm, and we see this a lot in kids who've been abused. Often this cycle of abuse even continues as they start to have their own children. So let's talk for a minute about trauma and the brain. What is actually going on here? Well, a lot of it depends on your genes. It depends on your environment that you're placed in. The brain is very adaptable. The brain develops at different rates. Part of your brain, the moment you are born, even before you're born, is fully developed. That's why you can breathe. That's why your heart beats. It's the autonomic system. But there are other parts that are much slower to develop. And in an infant, every second, minute I do this, 700 synaptic connections are being made in a baby's brain. It's just like this. It's constant. And the way that that happens is they're experiencing sights, sounds, touch, taste, anything that's going on in their world causes their brain to start firing. And it looks, if you see pictures of it, it's like little lightning storms in the brain matter. And this starts to lay down constant highways or neural pathways, depending on what the child is experiencing. So if a child is experiencing happy, loving, appropriate, then it lays down pathways that develop the ability to have those type of relationships. If that's absent, those pathways don't form. This is why language is so important. This is why having a parent who engages with their child is so critical. It's not just about the words that they're hearing, it's about the engagement. How many of you have let a baby grasp your finger and the baby babbles and you say, "Tell me more," and the baby can see your face and the baby babbles back more? That's called serve and return, and it is incredibly, incredibly important for language development and also for attachment. And kids who are neglected, they are not getting that. So the brain it's an incredible thing, our brain. The parts that don't get used, it starts to prune away. It's called pruning, because we would have too much up here if everything that happened to us got laid down permanently. So it only lays down the things that we need. So these parts of the brain, though, are very plastic. That's the good news. You've all heard you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's actually not true. It just takes the old dog a lot longer to learn the new trick than it does the little child. In fact, the front area of the brain, which is where all this executive functioning occurs, doesn't fully mature in a female till she's about 23 and a male till he's about 25. So for those of you who have children yet to get married, try and have them wait till they're at least in their mid-20s. So in normal child development, the ability to regulate their behavior, emotion, physical function is just starting. That's something they're still trying to master. Attachment, though, this is really key. And the reason this is so key for the work that we are all doing is because so many of our children that are in foster care are impacted by this attachment issue. And attachment is when you learn that somebody loves you and you love them back. And it's the most fundamental, basic gift that we can give any child. And without that, really bad things can happen to our children because they have lost that ability to connect with another human being. So caregiver input is so critical. So in a normal toddler, they are improving their self-regulation. That means they're learning that I can't just always walk over and grab that toy out of my friend's hand because I might get in trouble. They start to delay gratification. They're waiting their turn, or they're waiting to get that cookie until they finish a task. They can express feelings. They even start, this is interesting, they start to hide emotions. And this is really, really important for a lot of this work as well because, again, they can feel shame and they can feel guilt. So when you're working with these children and they say, nothing happened, it's because they can feel very embarrassed, even at this young of an age. Middle childhood, they start to reflect on the consequences before acting or expressing an emotion. At least that's what we hope that they will do. Mm-hmm. I have 3 teenagers, and I can tell you that this does not always happen. In adolescence, the big things with adolescents are the risk-taking and the impulsive behavior. In the adolescent brain, I don't know why God made us, our teenagers this way, but the reward center is bigger than the center that tells you, like, reason. And so in a teenage brain, have any of you seen those Jackass movies? Am I allowed to say that? You know, where they do those just incredibly dumb things, right? Well, that's because their brain is saying, if you do this, wow, you're going to be so cool and look really great, and even though it's really stupid, all your friends are going to think you're awesome. And that is more important than the rational side of their brain. This gets exacerbated when kids have experienced a lot of neglect and trauma. That executive functioning that offsets the risk-taking and the impulsive behavior has been compromised. So it really shows up later with our teenagers. So I mentioned that a lot of these children have attachment problems. Children as early as 2 to 3 years may show what we call behavior problems. This is where, as a society, we have a really hard time accepting that a 2 and 3-year-old could need mental health help. In fact, in the state of Georgia, if you are 4 and under, you can't get a mental health diagnosis. This is a big issue for our kids. We have kids as young as 2 years old that have come into Children's Health Care of Atlanta who've been raped. You cannot tell me that those children don't need intense therapy to get past what they've experienced. So why is this, though? I mean, what is going on here? Well, in recent years, there's this fabulous man named Jack Shonkoff, who's with the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. Have you met Phil? Have you met Jack? Yeah. He's like the Pied Piper of stress. And what Jack and his team have shown us is that there is this insidious force at work. And we often joke about it. I'm so stressed out, you know, I've got so much on me. But it's stress, and it is incredibly devastating. Why is that? Well, stress actually changes the architecture and the function of the brain. And it's pretty amazing, but it can impact your ability to have relationships as well as how you manage anything in your future life. But it's not the everyday stress I'm talking about, because obviously we all have stress in our lives. But most of the time, really significant stress is situational. You may be moving, you may be transferring to a new job, you might have lost a loved one, or moving to a new city. But when that happens with the child, generally, most of our kids have a supporting, caring adult around them to help them get through this situation. They feel the stress of it, but they know they're going to come out on the other side of that. But kids who are facing toxic stress, it's constant. They don't ever see the end in sight. They never know when it's going to happen. They have no supportive adult. It's just out of control. And this can lead to what we call fear conditioning. And for those of you who are foster parents, this can be a big issue, because oftentimes what happens with this conditioned response is, let's say that dad is the abuser, and dad works a job where he's required to wear a uniform. That uniform is a blue shirt. So every day when dad comes home, the bad things happen, and dad's wearing that blue shirt. So over time, it's the blue shirt that begins to elicit a nervous response. Regardless of who's wearing the blue shirt signifies that something bad may happen to me. And then what can happen over time from that, because the brain does all the things it can to try and protect the child, the brain starts going, inside that blue shirt was always a man. So the blue shirt then becomes a man, any man. That's called a fear-conditioned response, and that can make things very difficult for the families that these children come into. So I mentioned about the executive center of the brain. This generalized fear conditioning, this toxic stress, is damaging, actually, the executive functioning of the brain, because there's a stress hormone called cortisol. There's a lot of theories that that's what makes you get the fat around your middle. But bathing the brain constantly in cortisol is what actually damages it. It's toxic to it. So, and this last point is one that I really want you, if you hang on to just a few things tonight, this is one I really want you to hang on to, and that's that removing the danger doesn't fix the child. And very often we think if we pluck them out of this harmful situation, it's all going to be better. But it's not often for that child. And why is that? Well, and this is where it gets hard, because I know that many of you in this room have dedicated your lives to helping children, either through your profession or your volunteer work or who you give your money to. You've given your time, your talent, your treasure to helping children. And all of us want to see that a child who's experiencing horrific, unimaginable things at home is put into a safer, more stable situation. But even that can come at a price. So what happens when we intervene? Well, there's stress that comes with that. And there are forensic interviews that happen. There's behavioral health stuff that they need to start. There's medical exams. And medical exams, even in the best of situations, and we all know, they're not particularly fun or comfortable. But can you imagine being an 11-year-old little girl who's been sexually abused and now you have to go through another forensic exam? You're reliving that experience. And that creates trauma, again, for the very children we don't want to create trauma for. And then there's foster care. Despite how amazingly important foster care is, it can create separation from a sibling. And even though, this is what's so interesting about little children, even though mom or dad may have been, in our eyes, a monster, it's still their mom and dad, and they love them. So yanking them from their home is painful, and it's disruptive, and it's scary. And then, oftentimes, there's the visitation that occurs. Maybe they are really awful, and the kid is so happy to be out of there, but they still have to see that parent and relive that experience again. So what makes foster care so difficult? Well, a lot of this is because, again, with these young kids who've experienced this toxic stress, a lot of the skills that kids should have, they don't, and that gets exacerbated by the fact that they have poor language skills, and this concept of time issue is really important to think about. How many of you have told a 3-year-old that they have 5 more minutes to finish, playing, and then we have to clean up our toys and get ready for bed? Right. You might as well have told them it's 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years. They have no concept of time whatsoever like we do. We can see the end in sight of something. A 3-year-old can't. To them, it's forever. And so this, being pulled from mom or dad can look forever for them and make them very distrustful of when they might be able to get back to them. So I always feel a little bad because when I give these talks, I feel like I'm like Miss Negative Nellie. But I want to talk about what the community can do. There are solutions to this, fortunately. And part of it is coming together as a community. Part of it is not viewing this as just a DFCS issue. It's breaking down the silos and thinking about how do we holistically look at these children. And one of the ways is community involvement is critical for these kids. Good relationships with their peers, talents and creativity, these after-school programs that you work so hard to fund can make a huge difference. Boys and Girls Clubs, that's why I'm on the board of the Boys and Girls Clubs. I can't tell you how many times I hear children say, the Boys and Girls Club saved my life because it gave me a sense of purpose. It showed me I could be something more than I ever thought I could be. So these after-school programs can be critical. Religious beliefs. We're meeting with the faith-based community at the crack of dawn tomorrow morning. I don't know who set that meeting time. I'm not a morning person, but religious beliefs. Children who have a strong center of faith, regardless of what that may be, do much better than other children. So there are things as a community that we can do to come together around these kids. Because what we know is child abuse and neglect is going to have, there's no if, and, but about it, it's going to have a profound effect on the child. It influences their behavior, their brain development, their emotional well-being. It even affects them physically as an adult. Heart disease, certain forms of cancer, certain forms of diabetes have now been linked to having repeated toxic stress in your life as a child. even if it gets fixed by the time you're in middle school. What happened in those first years can affect you physically for the rest of your life. So this issue has reached into every facet of our society and has enormous consequences on our educational, our health, and our judicial system. Lots of times these kids end up in trouble. So a very wise man named Frederick Douglass once said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." It is up to us as a state and as individual communities to come together to mend our broken children and make them strong again. So I thank you for joining us in this effort, and we look forward to your engagement with us as we work to make strong children in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. I am Bobby Cagle. I'm the Director of the Division of Family and Children's Services. My role tonight is twofold. First is to tell you what our plan to move the department forward is, and it is also to be here to listen. I think it's very important for leaders of organizations to listen to the people that they serve so that we know what you want for your communities. It is not possible, in my estimation, to design an effective system that is operated from Atlanta in small communities all around the state. It's up to the communities to tell us what they want, to help us do the things that we need to do to keep children safe. I'll talk to you first about what we're calling the Blueprint for Change. And I know that this is pretty difficult to read, so I will hit each one of these on a separate slide. First, I want to tell you why we're calling it the Blueprint for Change. As we began to look at what we need to do to improve the safety of children and the services to families around the state, I began to think about how you build a house. And you build a house, of course, using a plan. And the blueprint is the plan for that. I began to think how we begin. Of course, you build a house beginning either with a basement or a foundation of some sort. And this plan is really the first page of the blueprint. It is the part that lays the foundation, and it is also the part that calls on you as citizens of the state of Georgia to help us flesh out what the plan is. I could have written a very detailed plan. I could have written a strategic plan from beginning to end without talking to any of you, but that would not have been the most effective plan. We've tried that before. It does not work. And so we're here asking for your input and your participation in the development of that. It is a three-point plan. First is the development of a practice model. And I could put you to sleep with a very complete description of what a social work practice model is, but I will make it very succinct for you. It just means that we are giving some guiding principles and some broad guidance to our workers about how they approach investigations and in working with families to make sure that their children are returned from foster care. How do you approach the family? What do you say to them? How do you deal with things, and in what order do you do that? How do you form a case plan? These are all basic things that are so important to the life of a case, to a family being able to know exactly what they need to do in order to either keep their child from being removed or to have their child returned to them. And this is part of what we have lacked for a long time. If you ask our staff right now, they could probably refer you to specific pieces of policy that say, do this, and do this. But if you start asking new workers in particular what the reason for doing that is, you oftentimes get a blank stare, and they cannot tell you what our practice model is. So we're going to be working on this very intensely, and this will include tons of training for our staff on the principles, the vision, the mission that we hope to accomplish, as well as a specific way to go about handling each of the cases that we have. Might just stop to tell you that there are about 36,000 cases that DFCS is handling in child welfare right now. Then if you look at the economic services side, the number of cases we serve, there are about 1.8 million, 1.2 million of those are households that are receiving SNAP or food stamp benefits. The second point of the plan is robust workforce development. The first thing that I went back to the governor to talk about was 2 days after I was into the job, I'd gone in to do some basic math. I took the total number of cases that we had, divided it by the recommendation from the national organizations that have studied optimal caseload sizes, which is 15 on average in child welfare. When I did that math, I found out that we were 40% short on the number of caseworkers that we needed in order to be able to do good work. What you need to know about social work is that it is all about relationships. It's about developing an initial relationship with a family, have them trust you at least to the extent that they can have some honest conversations with you, but also to help them in moving through problems that they have, accessing the services that they need. And to do that, you have to have time. The more cases you have, the less time you have to spend with each family, and therefore the lower the quality. So we need to get optimal caseloads. The first thing I did was to go back and ask for more staff. The governor had already allocated 175 staff for this current fiscal year, which began on July 1st. And we went back to him 2 days in and said, I need at least 100 more caseworkers. He told me that, this is the middle of a budget cycle, but I'll do what I can do. It was just short in time that he called me back. He'd had conversation with the appropriations chairs, Speaker of the House, and the Lieutenant Governor, who had agreed to give us 103 more staff. So we added 278 staff in one fiscal year, which was a major shot in the arm to our organization. I think if you talk to any of our caseworkers, they will tell you that a key to the morale that we have now versus the morale that we had this time last year, which was very, very low, is that we added caseworkers, gave them more time to do a good job. This is very stressful work. It's also something that you go into because you want to help people. And if you feel like you've left at the end of the day and you've not been able to accomplish those things, that is a very dismal thing to return to the next day. So giving them the opportunity to do good work is really important. We also have a 36% annualized turnover rate in the division. That means we're turning out 1 out of every 3 staff that we have, they're leaving us on a regular basis. What we found is that most of those people are leaving, going to other agencies that we contract with. So they may leave us one day, walk across the street, get a $5,000 to $10,000 raise, and then we contract with that private company to come back and provide the very same services with the person that we trained to do the services. And we pay that agency twice what we paid our staff person. Does not make sense. We have to correct that. We are also looking at mentoring for supervisors. So one of the things that happens when you move that many staff in and out of an organization is that the average length of experience for your supervisors goes down. And in this work, it's very important that you have good experience to be a supervisor. We have too many supervisors that have 2 years or less of experience and have moved into supervision. So part of what we're trying to do is to make sure that we provide them with mentoring from people who are already supervisors, have had this kind of experience in the past, to help them become better supervisors more quickly. And this is a strategy that has worked for me in other places and one that we're employing here. We also know that we need to improve the compensation. Again, we're paying, on average, $5,000 to $10,000 less than a private employer doing the same work in the state of Georgia. It is not reasonable to think that you would pay that low with work that is as stressful as what we have, with caseloads that are twice or 3 times the recommended size, and have those people stay with you. It takes truly dedicated people to do this work under good circumstances. And so we've recognized that we need to give additional funds for people's growth in their career. So we're creating a career path, including $5 million that was allocated to us in the current budget. So July 1st, we'll be able to give each of our caseworkers and our supervisors a raise that will be fairly substantial. That will be the first installment of a 2-year effort to get them to the market rate for the work that they do. We also know that supervision is very important. It's very, very funny when you survey staff. The responses that you get are not what you expect sometimes. We ask staff, what are the things that are making you leave DFCS? The first thing was not pay. Pay came down the list a ways. It was providing good support and supervision and making sure that they had someone providing them with guidance. So you'll see that we've hit on two of the most important things in this workforce development plan. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that we have the best training possible for our staff, and that the way that we deliver the training is the best method of delivery. We have depended for many years on classroom style training, which is very well known that that is not the most effective way to do it. The most effective way to do it is to mentor and to teach people on the job with an experienced employee. The way I was trained when I started, I had the great fortune to be working in a county that was small enough that I had a director who had 40 years of experience in doing child welfare. She worked with me on a daily basis, and for 6 months, I did not do a home visit. I did not see a person in the office without her being there and providing me with guidance. She would plan every visit with me. She would critique me as we went through the visit and very nicely correct me when I did something wrong. And as we left that visit, she would tell me what I did well, what I needed to do better the next time, and then we would begin the same process for the next person I was going to see. That is the way that you do training, and research bears out that that is the most effective, and that's what we're going to be moving to. The third part of this plan is constituent engagement. It's exactly what we're doing right now. I have done social work for 27 years, and I am firmly convinced that there is one way to do social work that is most effective, and that is by consulting with the people who are the community, working with the organizations that provide the services, listening to the citizens whose lives you ultimately impact about what is important for them, and to listen to them about the special aspects of their community. Every community in the state is not the same, and it is as widely varied as moving from Ringgold to going to Atlanta to an inner city neighborhood. It is also going from Savannah to Raven County. It is just a very varied state, and the fact that we have tried for many years to apply the exact same approach in every community in this state is evidence to me that we have not listened to our communities, and that is something that we're going to have to do better. That's a part of today. So the community is a great part of this. The other part of this is that we have not listened to our own staff. I have to be very frank with you. We have not even asked their opinion for years on matters that are extremely important. And I have to tell you, I've not carried a case in many years. I think probably 1999, 2000 was the last time I carried a case. I know what I knew back then. I knew my job very well. I've read a lot. I've listened to a lot of caseworkers throughout my career. But I can tell you, I don't know exactly what the work is like right now. So it's very important that we pull the people that do the work every day in to talk with us and to advise us before we start changing policy, before we start designing the training program. We need to know what they feel they need and design the work around the way that they would like to have it designed. That's another way also that we're going to be able to retain more employees, because that is showing basic respect for the people that work for you, making sure that you consult with them on things that matter, things that affect them on a daily basis. These surveys are very general, and they offer you a grand opportunity to tell us exactly what you want to see for your community. So we encourage you to engage with us in that survey. How are we going to get the survey to them? Will it be emailed to them?
There's a link that is on a handout in the back that they can.
Okay. There are handouts in the back. If you've not gotten yours already, there is a link that will take you directly to the survey. And so we encourage you to take the survey. We will be compiling this as we go to the 12 sites that we're doing the same thing in 12 sites all around the state. And we'll be collecting that information, compiling it, and using that to inform us as we design the further plan that we'll work from for the next 5 to 10 years. So this is your opportunity to have the voice in what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what's important to you in serving the children and families in your community. So we want to thank you for today. We're going to have a moment here to do some question and answers where Stephanie and I will do our very best to answer any questions that you have and to have further conversation with you that you are interested in. The attendance here today is very encouraging, and I'm so thankful to have this much interest. I knew when we set these up there was going to be interest. I didn't know there would be this much. Thank you to all of you who have been here today, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Well, good evening. I'm Pat Willis from Voices for Georgia's Children. I first of all want to commend the Commissioner and DFCS for putting this together and for really committing to the kind of input that you're here to give. Also thank my partner, Family Connection Partnership, for all of us coming together to help DFCS organize and administer this. But I'd also like to know who's in the room. And so with just a show of hands, how many that are here work for the county? Not necessarily in DFCS, but work for the county. Okay. Or city. Any city employees here? Great. How about education? Any educators here? Great. Providers of services for children in the nonprofit community? Great. Any medical folks here? Doctors, nurses? Thank you. Hospital people? Any foster parents? Great. So glad you're here. Anybody that just considers themselves an advocate for children? Yeah, and you can raise your hand more than once. Yeah. Okay, this is exactly the kind of cross-section of the community that I know that the Commissioner was hoping for, so thank you for being here. I want to tell you about this process we're going to use. I won't take too long, but both the why and the how. You might prefer to just stand up and give us your question, but in order to make sure that we get to as many questions as possible and that we don't repeat a lot, we're asking you to write your question on the cards that are available. On one side, we ask for your name and organization and so on, and the other side, your question. If we have all that information, when I ask your question, I will ask you to stand up so that we can acknowledge your participation, but we also give you a chance to do a follow-up question or comment. And if we have questions that overlap with each other, we'll try to bring them all together. And we have people that are taking your questions, so just raise your hand. And then we have Andre here, who has to pick up a microphone. You want to pick this microphone up so that when we do have a chance to get your comment or follow-up, we'll be able to feed it into the AV that's being provided tonight. It's now 10 minutes of 7. Our intention is to go to 7:30, but we'll break just a few minutes before the end because we do want to give our director here an opportunity to close out and deliver the call to action because there's no free lunch. Everybody has to participate, and we need a commitment from everybody to make sure our children are safe. So I will thank Jesse Young, who provided a question early so that I have the first one to start with. And Jesse, are you still here? Would you stand up, please? Catoosa County foster parent with a question. Why are foster parents not afforded the same legal representation during court proceedings as birth parents, DFCS, or children in custody? Why must foster parents pay out of pocket for an attorney in order to be heard in the courtroom?
The question you ask is a good one, and I'm afraid my answer is going to be a little legal, a little technical. So the law establishes a certain number of people who are parties to a case. Under state law, those people are required to have an attorney offered to them if they cannot afford one, or to give them an opportunity to represent themselves. At this point in time, this state and no other state that I'm aware of considers a foster parent to be a party to the case. And so that is the reason, if you want to intervene in the case, you have to have an attorney. Now, what I would say is that we ought to be giving you the opportunity to have input in these cases. Oftentimes, the participation in the court process is determined by the judge and their preference as to who is in the courtroom at what time. But I encourage, and by me saying we, I'm indicating all my staff ought to encourage foster parents to give input to the court regarding the welfare of the child and what you have observed during the time that you've been caring for the child. And if there's other information that needs to be given, I think the foster parent really deserves that right, and it ought to be submitted through us, through our attorney, and allow us to present that to the court. The other option is to go ahead and present a written statement to the court and mail it to the judge so the judge gets it before the hearing. The other issue here is that, of course, attorneys are very expensive, and so the number of attorneys that are involved that are paid for by the state in particular have to be limited because of the amount of money that we have to do that. But I do encourage you to try to engage with our local office by writing a letter, or write a letter directly to the judge. And I know that judges oftentimes read those letters prior to the cases so that they're well informed.
But we also want to make sure that we are not presenting ourselves slighted, because our goal is to reunify these children, but sometimes the concerns that the foster parents have are not always brought up in the court hearings. We do have the community panel review, yes, but sometimes those get postponed, and sometimes the recommendation of the community panel review also don't get presented to the court. Or we had, in a particular case, we had a recommendation of a TPR, and it's been 18 months since that recommendation. So that the community panel review, which is normally the time that the foster parents have an opportunity to voice their opinions or their concerns, sometimes those don't get scheduled, and because there is a caseload. And I am a huge advocate for DFCS, and I will defend my social workers to the death because I love them. They're the reason that we became parents. So we're not slighting them in any way, but sometimes in the shuffle, the voice of the foster parents, who are the closest thing to those children, you know, even more so, the social worker comes out once a month. The foster parents are there 24 hours a day. We're not even told when the proceedings start. We're sitting in the hallway. We have to watch for the birth family to go into the courtroom. So a lot of times we are on our own, and we are taking off work. We are taking our own personal time to be a part of this case and be a part of this plan, and we're just not being, our voices are just not being heard.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
I think we appreciate that insight. This question does not have a person, and if I read it and you want to raise your hand and stand up, please do. But this one goes to Stephanie Blank. You spoke about attachment and the importance. Oftentimes the foster parents are the only true attachment that foster kids have. The trauma from pulling a long-term foster child and reuniting with biological family is real. Can't there be a connection that is required to be kept for the mental health of the child? And clearly the director needs to respond to that as well. Did somebody want to volunteer? If not, it's fine. But
okay, so I don't know who I'm addressing, but you bring up an excellent point. Judge Peggy Walker, I know some of you probably know Judge Walker, is on our commission. And one of the things, so the commission is going to continue its work into 2015, 2016. The governor has allowed us to continue this work because we know that the first iteration of the commission only captured just kind of the lowest hanging fruit that was there, and there is much more work to be done. In this second iteration, one of the things we're going to focus on is how we better support foster families. I think part of that support is looking at who is the best person to long-term take care of that child, and very often it is the foster family. Courts are beginning to recognize this nationally, that pulling a child just for the sake of pulling a child is often more detrimental than leaving them with the foster family. So that is something we are going to be looking at within the council. There's not a specific set of recommendations around that yet, but there is growing awareness that the biological parent is oftentimes not who the child has attached to, and looking at what is in the best interest of the child is becoming more prominent in the family courts. But what I would also encourage you, and you spoke about your own experience, because we are going to be looking at the foster families and how to better support the work that you do. If you could, kind of systematically write down where the challenges are, what are impediments to having your voice heard, what you've seen within the court system. If you can send that to us, that would be enormously helpful, because we will take that into the council's work and look at where maybe there's some silly legal loopholes that we didn't even realize existed that get in the way of hearing the voice of the foster family. Oftentimes you find out that there's just some kind of no-brainer stuff that if we only addressed, it could make a difference for the families. So both of those are issues that we want to look at, and while we don't have specific answers about how that might look, we are going to be addressing it.
And so how do people send comments to you for the purposes of the council?
Well, if you're in this room today and you write it down and give us your email, we are going to be collecting that. If you go to the to Governor Deal's website, there is a drop-down page for the Child Welfare Commission, and there is an email address that is on that website as well, so that you can also email into the commission. All of our meetings are recorded and are posted online, so that you can actually go, if you want to sit and watch 5 hours worth of meetings each time, you do have the ability to do that. But we try to make that as transparent and open as possible, so we do look at those emails.
The question is an excellent one, and I have to tell you that doing this work for 27 years, some of these decisions are the most difficult decisions that I've ever made. The answer to this is not always clear-cut, and I have to tell you that I come at this from a personal place as well. I was adopted at 10 months from an orphanage in North Carolina, and so my personal perspective on this is that my parents always would allow me to go and find my birth parents, but I never did that until it was too late, until they passed away, and I've always wondered about that. So a child who knows that they're adopted, and if we're assuming a foster parent adopts, I always advise both the foster parent and the parent that receives custody back, whose rights are not terminated, that it is most healthy for the child to maintain both sets of relationships. That's when it works best. That is not always possible because of some of the issues that are experienced by the parents, or the difficulty that the foster parents have in breaking the bond that they have established with the child. And so federal law does require that if a parent resolves the issues within the time frames that are prescribed, that we have to return the child to their care and custody. The presumption there is that they're then again the parent and able to make the decisions for the child that are in their best interest. And so sometimes parents are very reluctant to do that. We try to encourage this through a system called partnership parenting. This is not used in every single case, but we encourage those who come into fostering to actually mentor parents, to help them become better parents, and to form that kind of relationship. So if the child does return, there is a better opportunity and a better chance that the parent will feel comfortable with maintaining that relationship with the foster parent And ultimately, I think that's what's in the best interest of the child, so that's what we try to encourage.
One piece of policy that we have put in
Stephanie, would you use the microphone so our
One piece of
videographer-
policy that is in place that has helped address this, even though it's not from the foster family side, is requiring, when possible, the child stay in the school or the child care setting that they've been in long term, because very often that child will have bonded with a teacher, especially when they're little. So trying to at least provide, the judges are now asking for continuity with that piece of it because of the attachment issue as well. So that is, there is policy around that right now, but that doesn't mean we can't work further.
So here's a real easy question from Jennifer Bell, the Catoosa County Schools. Can we have a copy of Ms. Blank's PowerPoint? If so, do we have permission to share the information with our faculty?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, we can email it right now.
That would be
I know
great.
Susan's got it, but yes, please share. That's the whole goal of this, is the more people are talking about this, because a lot of people don't like to talk about child abuse and the effects of it, but the more people who talk about it, and the more we bring this out of darkness, the more children will make better.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. Thank you. I appreciate that. We do our mandated reporter training at the very beginning of the school year, and that would be some excellent information that we could attach to that. Thank you.
And if you have questions about, if you have questions about this new, the data agreement, feel free to reach out, because you guys are I'm assuming you're a teacher?
School counselor.
And there's so few of you, and we need more of you. But this data sharing, you guys are the front line very often. Very often the teachers know exactly what's happening in that home.
Mm-hmm.
So your voice is so critical to the DFCS process, and we want to make sure that exchange is good.
Thank you.
So we have a couple questions here related to health services. So I'm going to ask both of them, and maybe you can answer them together. One comes from Rachel McCrickard from Georgia Hope, and this question is, in what ways can private Medicaid mental health providers improve our services in a way that aligns with your blueprint for change? The second one is, so many doctors have stopped taking the medical insurance for foster children. These kids need these doctors. What can be done to get more to accept state insurance?
I'll take the first one. And the blueprint is designed around a specific model. And so the practice model that we will be implementing is called solution-based casework. What it calls for to work at its optimal is that the services provided to families are evidence-based. So the ones that work best with it are cognitive behavioral, multisystemic therapies that deal with the whole family and not just the child or just the parent. So if, as time goes on, what we're going to be doing is realigning all the spending of the department to meet the goals and objectives of our strategic plan, and that will be part of what we will be doing. That will only occur after we have had consultation with the full private provider community around this. We think that the private provider community actually is much further along in using evidence-based practices than we are as a department. That's our hope. But we want to make certain before we make a change that's this big that we have people out there providing the kind of therapies and evidence-based approaches that we need in order to make it most effective.
Yeah, the other thing that's going to be, we're hoping to have happen is telemedicine is really exploding within the state of Georgia, and there's some private providers who are doing telemedicine for mental health and doing it effectively. And Bobby and I have already had some conversations with one of those providers to talk about how we might do a public-private partnership to extend more mental health into our communities. Very often, a lot of these communities don't have anybody doing mental health work, and so and it gets worse when as the children get younger, access to that. So we are trying to think creatively about how you leverage the strengths that are out there to be able to get to more children, and we think that telemedicine is one of those.
Rachel, or did you
Just
have a follow-up?
Just a little bit more on that answer, and I'm glad to answer any further question that you have here. This is an issue that I am pressing very hard on. In particular, we're having great deals of difficulty in accessing services for our foster children who are covered by Medicaid through a provider called AmeriGroup. I think AmeriGroup wants to do the right thing on this, but we're having difficulty getting the services that we need for those children. I raised the alarm on this last week. I requested that we convene a monitoring and oversight board at the state level to consider the problems that we're having with this, including lack of access to providers, especially in rural communities, and the denial of services that are, I consider to be just basic services for some of our foster children. If you have examples of that, I want you to send any of us those examples, because I'm funneling all those to this monitoring and oversight committee so that they can consider it. I'm going to continue to push on this until we get these things resolved.
And does that respond to the other question from Shay Love about doctors dropping out of taking medical insurance?
Mr. Cagle, I just want to say that as a foster parent for many years and an adoptive parent, a lot of our children have to see specialists. Some of the specialists, especially we have to go across the state line to T.C. Thompson, some of the specialists have dropped out. In our area in Catoosa County, we're finding a lot of the dentists are backing out. I went personally and asked, and I was told that it was taking 6 to 7 months for payment. So now we've got an excellent doctor from Chattanooga or Tennessee coming to right here on Battlefield Parkway that's indecisive if he's going to take state Medicaid or the AmeriGroup or whatnot. And our children are going to miss out because he is an excellent doctor. So I want to personally tell you, I want to work with somebody to help these local doctors understand that it is a transition. You know, it's not taking 6 months. I know for a fact it didn't take 6 months because my child went and it took 31 days for payment. So I feel like we're being given the runaround on this just because when they see it's state Medicaid.
I think that that's part of the problem. I would love to have further conversation with you. If you'll give your contact information to
Absolutely.
Donna, I'll follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
This question comes from Suzanne Harbin. Suzanne? We are hearing about extreme wait time for SNAP applications. Are you all aware of this problem? What is being done to correct the issue? Are there viable solutions for non-English speaking parents?
There are viable solutions for non-English speaking individuals. We're required by federal law to provide a language line that provides interpretation, and I think we're up to 48 languages at this point. So what we do is a system where we link in a language interpreter that can be the intermediary, certified interpreter, so that we know that what we're saying is what's being given to the client and vice versa. That is a tough system to use, but it's probably the best alternative that we have right now. As far as wait times go, this has been something that we have been working on diligently since the day I got there. We had made a decision to move to a system that was not done in county offices. It was intended to be done via telephone and computer, and that a call could be routed to a call center anywhere in the state, and they would handle the eligibility decisions. I gave them 60 days from the time that I came aboard to show me that that process could work. And in doing so, what I wanted to see was a cut in half of the wait time. At that time, it was 46 minutes on average for a call, with calls that were lasting up to, people are on hold up to 6 hours. I found out at the end of the 60 days, our improvement was not there. We have switched back. Effective July 1st, we will be assigning individual representatives caseloads of families. So we call it one worker, one family. And we will once again be moving toward handling all of our eligibility services in our county offices using technology services like telephones, like computers, for those who are comfortable with using them and would prefer to do that. I think we lost a vital link to our community when we took those services out of the county offices, so they will be returning before the end of this year.
There's 3 questions on this card. I'm just going to ask one right now from Cynthia Gibson. And I will address this initially to Stephanie. And is our juvenile court judge still here? No? Okay.
I'm the court administrator.
Okay. Well, it's really about superior court judges, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. So. Okay, well, this question does. So it says, can you educate superior court judges on trauma and how it affects children short and long term?
Well, the answer, was it you that asked the question? The answer is we will take our show anywhere that is a receptive audience for us. And if you've got a contact, if you've got someone that we could talk to, we are happy to go and talk to them about this, because very often for folks who are dealing with older adolescents, if they don't have a background or a history in how trauma impacts their decision making, it can affect how sentencing occurs, what type of management, goes into effect for those children in terms of services and treatments. So we are very interested in having the whole judicial system understand the effects of trauma on children. So we're happy to go. We have 2 family court judges as a part of the Child Welfare Reform Commission, Judge Teskey and Judge Walker. We do not have a superior court judge. So it's an interesting, particularly for children who are aging out of the foster care system. So it's something we'd be happy to look at.
Well, I'm also talking in the context of the superior court judges are making the custody and visitation decisions for these children without understanding the trauma they may have experienced, oftentimes through domestic violence, and how the impact of exposing these children to that abuser can create additional trauma. It's just something that there's not education out there. Of course, the judges have to want the education and attend the education even when it's offered. But we have one judge that has sought education, and when you appear before that judge, it's just a phenomenal difference as to what the outcomes can be. So,
do you think that judge in particular would be willing to partner with us to help convene
I would think that the judge would definitely be willing to.
Well, if you would be willing to reach out to him and ask him to get in contact with us, that would be great. We would love to, partner with him.
I think that is such a great question. Also, in looking at the crime that judges see in their courtrooms, I think education in this would give them more insight into why they're seeing what they see. I heard an expert a couple of weeks ago that gave a very simple explanation of much of what we see wrong in society today. He said that if you have a child who experiences trauma and they do not receive treatment, you will see them inflict trauma in one of 3 ways. You will see them inflict trauma on themselves by turning their anger inward. You will see them inflict trauma on others, or you may see them do both. And for me, the brain development and the trauma explanation that Stephanie gave and the further information that I've been able to read over the last couple of years gives a great explanation as to the real source of much of the ills of society that we see today. And I think the suggestion of the Superior Court judges is great.
Going to ask a very specific question about the Child Abuse Registry, and then there are several questions about money for one thing or another, and maybe you could just talk generally about the budget and what it takes to increase our resources. So the Child Abuse Registry question comes also from Cynthia. What is an example of a civil case that would result in a person being on the Child Abuse Registry?
So actually what Stephanie said was a civil finding. And the language in this changed several times during the legislative process, and I haven't been able to catch up with Stephanie to talk with her about this. What we're talking about when we say civil findings is a finding made by the department. So if we make a finding that a child was abused or neglected, then we place them on the registry. They get notified in advance of being placed on the registry so they can dispute it. They also get the opportunity, once placed on the registry, to go before an administrative law judge and then appeal all the way through the state Supreme Court to have their name removed. That's a slight variation that happened toward the end of the session, and Stephanie and I have not had an opportunity to talk about.
Not every case that DFAC sees has criminal charges either brought against them. And so that's a really important distinction, because if those charges aren't filed and it's not prosecuted criminally, then there's no record that way either. So this was done, you know, to kind of catch that.
One question, and I'm going to paraphrase this, and this one doesn't have a person on it, but it's really about the money for foster parents, that they really don't make much money given that they're 24/7 and have a major responsibility for our children. Second question is about, is there additional funding for the services that children and families need, not just the caseworkers, but the services? And then the final one, oh, and that one comes from Cynthia. And then this one comes from Tammy Harden from the Catoosa County Juvenile Court, which is not exactly a budget need, but with the budget changes, does that mean there's no hiring freeze now within DFACS? And notes that we've had several workers leave in Catoosa County. And so
the budget, again, was increased by about $36 million. That is in comparison to about a $1.2 billion budget that we had prior to that. But it's the largest increase in funding that we've had in the past 11 years. So very pleased to get it. It does go to directly address the needs around additional salaries, hiring additional workers. We'll have another 175 come on to be trained effective July 1st. The current status of hiring is that we have had to stop hiring for the moment, and I'll tell you why. I went in with the attitude that we were going to spend enough money to get people in the door to the extent that I could. So I spent as long as I could without going over the budget. So I would get in somewhat of a quagmire if I went over my budget. So what I did was I spent as aggressively as I possibly could as soon as I walked in the door to try to bring as many people on our staff as we could possibly get. We have reached the point where we're having to hold off on hiring, but that will restart effective July 1st. So the positions that are left vacant right now, if they're considered critical, we can move those through for hiring. But the majority of the ones that go vacant right now will have to wait till July 1st to be filled. Now we can go ahead and post an interview and have it ready for an offer, but we have reached the budget limit right now.
this question comes from Kathy Wages from Family Connection. Who are some specific partners in a county who are needed to support families that are not at the table already? And how can they be encouraged to get involved in preventing child abuse?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Do you have a home visitation program working in Catoosa County? Yes, no? Anybody know? Well, that's one excellent program is a home visitation program, and there's a couple of models that we could, give you information on. But home visitation has been proven to reduce abuse and neglect. It creates a better attachment with the parent and child. It also, if it starts prenatally, reduces low birth weight babies, which is an issue for you guys as well. So there's a lot of pluses to the home visitation. Nurse Family Partnerships is a really, really good one. A lot of national data about the strength of that program. The other one is a program called Parents as Teachers. excellent program if that's not in your county, but that's another great resource as parents, as teachers. And then I mentioned, really strong after-school programs. And Tammy, is it you that's in the juvenile court? So one of the things that we are going to be piloting in the Metro Atlanta area with the Boys and Girls Club is we are getting ready to have a program with the Department of Juvenile Justice. Avery Niles is the commissioner, and they see a lot of young people who are in this adolescent period where they've been untreated, they're acting out, they're on the cusp of getting themselves into really serious trouble. They've been in the juvenile court. Everything's been minor until this point. So the program model that we're going to be trying in Metro Atlanta is those children have the option of being in the juvenile court system or being sent over to the Boys and Girls Clubs. And we think we've already got some beginning evidence that this can be very powerful for these kids if they have to go to a Boys and Girls Club program 3 or more days a week. So that's kind of the out-of-the-box kind of thinking that can really help these kids both from birth all the way up through adolescence, because this is, it is a continuum. The other thing that I would say is recognition within your health care system of what abuse looks like. And this can be a real issue because a lot of physicians have not ever had training on recognizing child abuse. This is where Children's Healthcare of Atlanta can be a great partner for local organizations. We have folks that'll come out and train and use telemedicine and work with your local pediatricians, ER docs on how to recognize shaken baby syndrome or physical abuse and neglect, because very often you've got a very believable parent in an emergency room and they're saying all the right things, and the tendency is to want to believe an adult. It's not to want to think the very worst. But if you're trained in this, bruising patterns, fractures in weird places, then you know enough to start digging further. And that will help protect our children as well.
I was so pleased as Pat went around the room. The essential partners are all represented here today. And that's not the case always when you go to communities. Two of the primary partners that we have to have relationships with are law enforcement. I spent the better part of last evening talking to many law enforcement folks that came together to talk to us about the very things we're talking about tonight. I see a couple of them in the audience here with us tonight as well. The school system is the other partnership that we have to have. Service providers and foster parents. We also need the faith community. Therefore, we're going to be doing the event in the morning with the faith community here in this area. And I'd say that I would answer it another way. There's no person in the community that is not important to the child welfare system and being a part of it. So we welcome everybody to come to the table because it is the active involvement of the citizenry that improves the safety for children. We're a limited number of staff. We have around, I think it's 6,700 staff around the whole state. And half of those are in our economic services programs. So we can't be everywhere all the time. The best thing that we can do is to have the community be our eyes and ears, and if nothing else, having the community person who sees something that concerns them call our hotline. That is the most important thing that they can do, and but just thank you for all the folks that are here.
And Phil wants to
Director Cagle, can I just say that?
Can you come to the mic so that
I
you
can.
catch it back?
In Catoosa County, we've gotten a group together, and we're going to be working in a collaborative effort with different agencies and faith-based and nonprofits. We're kicking this event off. Well, I shouldn't say kicking because that's not what. We're going to spearhead launching this event off in a Community of Hope luncheon, and it will be on January the 11th. And a lot of you in this room, June the 11th. I hope I've been doing that all month. June the 11th at noon at Constitution Hall in Fort Oglethorpe, and we're going to be talking and addressing a lot of the hot spots, and we know where they are in Catoosa County and what we can do to collaboratively work together to affect those places.
So we're getting close to 7:30. I do have about 7 questions here that we're not going to get to. I think we'll have a way to compile these and share it online somehow. But there's a few that are about training and hiring and staffing. One is specifically about training foster parents. Is there a set-aside fund to provide ongoing training to current foster homes? The other is more about staff, and that one was, and the one person that wrote their name was Matthew Bowers. Okay, so I'm going to go with both questions. What steps can the department take to be more competitive in the something of quality employees and to reduce turnover, attracting quality employees and reduce turnover? The other is, in your future plans for staff development, are you going to be considering hiring more social work graduates or requiring more workers to be educated in those fields of study?
So in order to get the kind of staff that we need, we're going to have to change the image of DFCS. It is, as one of my young staff told me recently, it's not cool to work for DFCS right now. And so what we are really trying to do in events like this all around the state is really change the image of DFCS to make it more obvious that we're here to partner with the community as opposed to being the agency that comes in and does awful things to families, like tear them apart. And so we have to change the image. We have to improve the compensation. We have to make the workloads reasonable. Those are all things that will help us get there. The training for our staff is an essential part of that as well. I think that in jobs that I've enjoyed the most is they're the jobs that provide the best training. You feel like you're really building yourself into a better employee, and that's a part of the redesign of the training that we're looking at too. I think there was another question.
Training of foster parents, continuous training, and I would just throw into that one too, specifically funding available for grandparents raising their grandchildren.
So the training of foster parents is extremely important. We will be partnering with universities to redesign the impact program to better suit the needs of foster parents. My desire is to train all foster parents to a therapeutic level. That is a long-term goal. But we will be working with foster parents to redesign that training to make sure that we're providing the kind of information that they need and to add the trauma-focused information that we provided here today to help people understand the difficulties that the children are facing. The other last issue was? Oh, grandparents raising grandchildren. There is actually a study committee that's going to be chaired by the House Minority Leader, Stacey Abrams, that will convene later this summer to talk about this very issue. We provide a certain level of support to grandparents raising grandchildren, which is a fund that is paid for out of temporary assistance to needy families. It's not a large grant, but it's a larger grant than what we give for most folks. The study committee that will be looking at this will be looking at the issue of compensation for grandparents that are raising grandchildren. I think it's an important thing that we look at because in many cases, these children are one step from becoming foster children. If it were not for the grandparents stepping in the gap, we would have that child in the foster care system, and it costs considerably more. One of the things that we have done is to add staff called relative navigators to help people that are caring for their relative children we need people that can help them access the services that they need. So it's not just providing them with money. It is making sure that they know which services are available to them in the situation that they're in. So that's one of the things that we've done in addition to that. I encourage you, if you have suggestions around this, to be in contact with your legislators. I see that we have one of the legislators in the back here. And also, I ask you to thank them for the support that they provided to us this session, both monetary as well as law, that will help us do a better job in all the things that we've talked about.
Well, I want to thank you for all of your many and varied questions. I will also say, before the director does his sum up, that as these programs are going around the state, we are hopeful of live streaming them, at least in a couple of locations. And so anybody that might have missed tonight or that might want to tune in again, look for those announcements about the next events and the live streaming and the link that will allow you to not only tune in, but even to ask questions. So thank you again, and I see that Stephanie has one more thing she has to add.
There was one thing I wanted to mention before Bobby closes us out, and I'm so excited, Phil, to hear what you guys are doing. That's great news. And as you get this group together, one of the things that I would ask that you maybe consider thinking about is parenting programs, because it's really shocking how many cases that DFCS sees that are because a parent was disciplining a child because they have no idea of appropriate developmental needs of children and how, when they're supposed to be potty training. We see kids who get put in scalding water as a form of punishment, and they've got, second and third degree burns on their little bottoms because of they're not old enough to be potty trained, but the parent doesn't understand that and thinks the child is doing it deliberately. So parenting, our goal is to work ourselves out of business, because the truth of the matter is if we build better parents, then DFCS won't be needed. Now that's a really lofty goal, but if we can prevent this from ever happening in the first place, that's the real goal in building a better system. So I would encourage you to think about how you reach, especially young, first-time parents who maybe don't have a great family network of support around them. The other thing that the commission is going to be, as I mentioned earlier, looking at is the mental health issues that face our children who've been in this system. We know we are not adequately addressing those issues starting at a very young age, and what happens by the time they are older adolescents is they've grown into serious depression, anxiety issues. So we do want to address this. We know that mental health is one of the biggest nuts we've got to crack within the child welfare system, and that is one of the key things that we're going to be honing into. So we are not forgetting about what these children are going through in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
And I would just insert that there was legislation this past session that requires training of all of our educators about the signs of suicide every year. So that will be one step. And there is a study committee this summer on child mental health.
I just want to close by thanking you and asking you for continued participation. This has been a great event. It has been everything that I hoped it would be. And I want you to continue to work with us. We are going to be forming regional and state level advisory boards. If you're interested in participating in that role, please let me know. We will be making recommendations to the governor for the people that will serve on those. So we would welcome you to work with us there. We also welcome you to get with your local county director and talk with them about what you can do in your community to help. There are many roles. Typically, DFCS has only asked people to be foster parents. Well, the fact of the matter is there are many roles that you can play that are of assistance to the department, including supporting foster parents in some way or another. Not everybody can take a child into their home, but they can periodically cook a meal for a family that has a new child in their home. that would help them deal with the kind of stress that brings into their family. So we welcome you. We, again, just want you to know that this is the beginning of the conversation and not the end. As long as I'm the director of the department, we will continue consulting with the community and welcoming your input. And we just thank you so much for taking the time. You could have been doing many different things today. You chose to be here to talk with us about the welfare of the children in the state of Georgia, and we do appreciate that.